We can call the meeting to order. Jen, you want to take roll just for formality?
I will, please. Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Waldner.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Thill.
Here.
And Mayor Lindsay.
Here. Okay, and the agenda basically today is budget discussion. So
Adopt agenda, please.
I
Formal meeting.
don't have a copy of it in front of me, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah.
Thank
Second.
you.
That's probably.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, so there's nothing else on the
All right,
agenda
sounds
except
good.
new business. It was probably in your
And-
mailbox, sorry.
Yep.
2019 budget discussion.
All right, Jen, do you want to take the lead on this?
I will start. Yes, we are here this morning under the direction of Mayor Lindsay with the support of the Board of Commissioners, simply to roll out and make public what it is that we're looking at to put into our 2019 budget. Our key documents this morning are going to be the capital outlay, special projects, and promotion listing. This document's been rolling around out there for a couple weeks. It's been in and out of a couple of the departments. Mayor commissioners have had it probably for about a week or so now. Those are, as always, the special projects, just as stated, and some of the capital type things that we're looking at placing into the budget. Okay? The other key document that we'll talk about later on this morning is just in front of the Board of Commissioners at this time, and this is very tentative cash balances. We all worked really hard this year thanks to our department heads who appeased my requests, and we have gone through the 2018 budget line item by line item and estimated what it is that we intend to spend in 2018. So if you look at the cash balances document here very quickly in front of you, you'll see the cash balance for 2017 year end, our ins and outs for 18, with an estimated cash balance at the end of 18. Then we're plugging in our 19 estimated revenue and expenditures to come up with an estimated cash balance at the end of 2019. And to me, this is key. If we are comfortable with what we're spending in each fund, and we're comfortable with what our estimated cash balance is going to be at the end of 2019, we should be comfortable with what it is that we're putting in our budget.
Very good.
Mayor, do you want to then start? Do you want to roll out this document here, this capital outlay special projects, and just open discussion?
Well, one of the reasons in that, that I asked for it to be public is, we want to make sure that the public has a chance to have the input. The media has an opportunity in that to, present to the public and have public comment. Next Monday, we'll have our first reading. And when it'll be 2 weeks later, we'll have our second reading. There can be adjustments made in that between first reading and second reading, but it's always nice to, be open with the public and that on where their tax dollars are spent.
And I do absolutely anticipate that. We have talked about that. We will have first reading. Codified law requires that you have your first budget reading the first Monday in September, or the first meeting in September, or 10 days thereafter. So we do have to have that first reading, but we'll all agree that we've got a lot of work here still to do, and we'll probably have a second first reading, which is totally allowable and actually required if you make any substantial changes. Now, substantial in the finance office world and with other finance officers is subject to opinion, what is substantial, what isn't. But normally if you make any changes within that budget, you have another first reading.
Sounds good.
And that double first reading, to FYI, will not delay our process of getting our tax levy over to the county auditor, because none of that will change.
Well, what's the next step after the first and second reading then?
Adoption.
Publication. Publication, right? Your second reading is when you would adopt it, and then you publish it, and it's effective 20 days later.
Okay. And then when we finalize.
That's when you finalize.
That is it.
Right.
But
You're going to finalize in between that first and second reading, so that when you roll out that second reading, that's what you're adopting.
That's your budget.
So we have an opportunity after the second to make adjustments.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because if, you always plan, you're doing your budget 15 months before the end of it. And so that's part of why you have a contingency plan. And also if something comes along of an emergency nature needs to be done, then you make amendments to the budget, before the end of the budget year.
There are
So,
numerous
I asked that
ways
because-
to change your budget,
Because
right?
This is a public meeting, I think it's important, the public is informed that we have some latitudes. They seem to
Yes.
grow smaller as we go along, and we do have some latitudes before the first of the year.
They're just not
And
processing.
then
what
within
used
the
to.
budget cycle, we have some latitudes too, to make some transfers in certain funds, okay? So, while I hate to use the word salient because it makes it sound mushy, the budget, there is some saliency to it. And it's what we pass, what we try to stick to, what we try to work on, okay? But things happen, and we do have some latitudes in the year. So, thank you.
Mhm.
So, very good. No, as we come down through and that, the police department's looking at replacing a 2015 Charger. I did visit with Justin, and I know Mike has visited with him as well, and it's a vehicle that's got 90,000 plus on it, has spent as much time in the shop probably as it has on the road, and we budget that for replacement of those, so it would be a normal budget replacement item in that, so that's in there. Gary, you've got a street sweeper in there. Did you want to discuss that at all, please? And again, I want to emphasize in that we are recording it, so it makes it better for someone to hear and that if we're at the speaker, or at the microphone.
It's a 2012, we bought a new sweeper. It is scheduled for replacement. It's a good machine, we take good care of it, but you let it go too long. It's in the worst conditions every day as possible.
Mhm.
It's in the sand and the water. And I was talking to Tom about it though. That schedule was kind of set up back in the day when they had chains, and that would wear out. Everything was just kind of wore out by the 6-7 years. You might be able to get another year out of it, but then your trade-in values less, so kind of a pay now, pay later
Mhm.
deal.
So,
But
You are
yeah,
suggesting we use capital replacement reserve funds too, to help fund that $125,000
yes.
of your
Yeah,
capital
and I
replacement.
didn't get the trade-in value back, but
Okay.
can you look at it last week? But I would say they're pretty good.
mhm.
It is a good machine, it's just, that's how they've done it in the past, it's just kept it.
Replace it well before it's a major issue, and then while it still has some trade-in value toward the newer one, then basically. And then I think the next one down is also your snow blower.
We are relying on 2 snow blowers to do what we need to do, and we would replace the oldest one. The one we're using now every day is a 99, and that's definitely showing some wear. Again, we're really in wet, salty environment, so they really get beat up. And with picking up the highways, we're doubling our snow that we do pick up. And that last snowstorm really showed that when we rely on that old one, it's not good. I was joking yesterday that it's hard to find horses hooked to it.
Mhm.
It's just an old machine.
Do we need to line up more horses?
Yeah, we need more.
Problem is the machine, Gary, it's the horses.
We're also scheduled to use some capital replacement reserve money at that too, also $125,000.
So are we just drawing that reserve down this year, or are we?
By $250. $125 for the street sweeper, and then $125 from the capital replacement reserve, or for the snow blower.
And those are dollars that are put in there for this purpose anyway.
Was there 500
You know.
in there?
And, anticipated replacement each year. So. And then Kelly Cresswell Striper.
Yes. We are striping right now. We have 2 stripers, but both of them are showing their age. We would probably save the best of the 2.
Okay. And then the next item on here that I believe is yours also is the hoist.
That was requested by Tom. Our hoist is showing some wear. This was actually a hoist that you could put a truck on. It's got a mobile unit.
Okay.
You can use it for just about everything, so.
Now, would this also would be an additional, so if you had something tied up on the other one and that, then he'd have this in here available so he can keep working,
Yeah.
and, you know, when you're waiting for parts in that for whatever you've got on the other hoist?
And
Okay.
the other hoist, you're limited to what, you get into these big one-ton pickups and you're really pushing the
Yeah.
max on what you can put on it.
Well, and those are cable hoists too, aren't they?
Well, it's a chain drive.
It-
Instead of a cable, it's a chain, but
Okay.
it's definitely showing its wear. It's been there at least 20 years.
Mhm.
So they do have some life, 25 years, I would say, get out of them.
Sure. And I know they've got safety stops on them and that, you know, as you're going up. But if you have a, cable or a chain break and one portion of that hoist tips down, I know we have a former businessman in town who tipped one over on a hoist one time, and that's not a pretty sight
No.
or a pretty issue to get it out of there besides the safety issue, so. All right. I don't know.
Do you want to keep going on equipment?
On,
I was just looking to see if while Gary was there, if there was anything else in
Garbage
here.
truck. Do you want to say something?
on street sweeper, how many hours in the summertime do you put on that?
We're averaging 600 to 700 a year.
And I know we used to run it years ago, a lot more than that. We had a guy on it all the time,
Yep.
and we got 9 to 10 years out of them.
I
With,
don't believe we have that position anymore, so we're gonna.
no, we don't have that position anymore, but, I
My
was
point
just-
being, we probably would run it more if we had somebody like that was running it all the time.
Yeah,
We
the
don't,
first-
we just don't have that.
I was just wondering if we could get a couple more years out of that right now.
Yeah, like I
It's-
said,
it's something to look at.
It's just scheduled, so that's where we're at there. So the town agreed with that too. Yeah, we've had some issues with it, blow holes. The thing about it is the newer stuff, once it goes, it's a lot more expensive to fix. Got dry motors on the sweeper brooms. When they go out, before it was a chain, now it's $3,000 to $4,000 for a motor. You gotta weigh that. But, yeah, it's a good machine, it's just scheduled to be replaced.
You can probably get more for it now from your trade-in rather than
Right.
beating it up for another couple of years, and then you're playing that game, and I think whatever we can do for the street sweeper, because it's great when it keeps our streets clean, it makes the town look nicer. To me, that's an economic development thing, and people may not look at it that way, but it is. You got a junky looking town with junk in the curbs and everything else. I mean, doesn't look favorably, so.
Well, you and Kelly can visit with that and, kind of see if it's this year or next year, whatever, on that one there. So.
If we didn't this year, we talked about yesterday was, if we didn't do it this year, it goes back to Mike's comment, how much valuable it is. And of course,
Sure.
how do you know for sure even? But I wouldn't say we could go more than another year without it. Maybe one more year, maybe, our value of trade-in, we have to see, but both Bob's question and Mike's are relevant. It's just that these are, when at one point you say that, it's gotta be it. So I don't wanna get to that point.
Nope, I hear you, so.
We had a question earlier this spring about snow gates. Do we have any,
We have done
what's the
nothing.
conversation doing there?
We've really not made any decisions on that this year at all. Based on some of the replacement schedule stuff, that was a priority at this point. which isn't to say that Snowgates is off the table, it's just not something that, in the midst of things, or in the mix of things, I don't think it's something we can afford to look at this year.
If you were to do it, you'd buy at least another maintainer or
Yeah.
acquire one.
That's a good point. I don't feel good.
Last year,
To rental
there
or
was,
purchase.
last year there was a group of us that went to Sioux Falls, and we had a nice visit with them. They have snow gates. The main reason they have snow gates, the public voted them in. They said, you're going to lose time, and the other thing is once you get, and if my memory is correct, above a 3-inch, maybe 4-inch snowfall, they're not, they're not effective, because it'll pile up and fall over the top, and so instead of leaving a lower drift that people can drive over, you leave big chunks. But they said that they had to go to them because the public voted it in. And we did have a snow gate, and that a couple of years ago while I was mayor, and we had that on lease, and we did try it, and in the small snows, and that it does work. But we did catch a curb with it, and it was a good thing we bought the extra, protection on it, because if I remember right, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about $8,000 to repair the grader from having that carrier broken.
That was another issue we had. We caught
Yeah,
a water valve and took the
there's a water valve rather than a curb.
gear out of the center.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had insurance to pay for that.
Yeah,
That was on a rental blade,
yeah. So I mean, it's not that we have not had them, it's not that we have not tried them in the past, but it is a discussion, I think, for another year, because it's not something that we've included in the budget that's going to be read next Monday. So,
Have you and Kelly talked about another rental blade? We used to have a rental blade and our other one to clean up and re-scrape. Have you guys talked about that and put that in the budget?
No, I don't think we did this year, did we?
We talked about it, but we didn't put it in there, because like I said, we have so many other issues that we were looking at.
I'd like to see a second blade because I think it would really clean up the town and get the hard stuff off where the one-ways don't.
Yeah, I don't have anything against that, I guess.
How much would it cost?
That's what I was, do you remember what, I think we're at like
I think it was 39 bucks an hour that we run it and $39 a day that we kept it up here. It was well worth it for 5 months. You got it like 1st November and took it back to 1st of April.
Did we do that? I think
Is that 2 years ago?
What's that?
When was the last time we had?
Oh, let's see.
4 years ago, 4 or 5.
I remember the discussion with Fred, and it was dealing with like the odds of having them sitting around too much and not using it. I mean, that was, you're paying for them and you're not using it on a daily basis. And as I recall, I thought it was just too much of a gamble if you would have the equal snowstorm that we had this last year. I don't know, we'll look at it, Bob. It's that and the idea of having another maintainer too.
But it really goes better to when you go out to re-scrape your highways and stuff. It really works a lot better than the one-ways. The one-ways are good in their purpose, but to get that hard packed down snow off, you got to have a couple blades out.
I don't want to get us hung up on this one item, but I will say that I think the
Sorry.
last couple of years, no, that's okay. The last couple of years, these guys have done a great job with the streets.
Oh yeah, I'm not
So,
saying.
if we had a huge need to improve right now, then I'd say we should look at that right away. But so far this year, we've had pretty good luck with what we're doing. So we certainly will consider that down the road, but things, anyway, enough said.
I can add to that, just looking back at
Roxy,
2013, guys.
if you wouldn't mind coming up to the mic, I'd really appreciate that.
I'm just looking back on the 2013 budget, It looks like in snow removal, we had in rentals, $12,000 budgeted. I don't know how much of that was for the grader. But that's what I'm seeing back in 2013, which would make sense to your time frame we're referring to.
I think you pay that whether you use it or not,
Right.
plus
Right.
the hours. So.
And I think that was when Fred told me to do that, he had decided not to try to do that again. It was just simply the hours and, the daily rental, whether you're using it or not. Just like,
I think we figured with, trying to get the snow blower this year, we were just trying to save the money.
that's really where we want to be at, snow blower is.
Well, and when you talk about depreciation, when you're paying by the day, you're paying for their depreciation.
Yep.
Because the next year, it's gonna be worth that much less, plus whatever hours it has on it, so.
We live in South Dakota, it's gonna snow, the streets are gonna have snow on them, it will melt.
Well, maybe if
So
we
this-
spend a bunch of money getting ready, it won't snow.
There you go. Yeah, that's usually what happens, if you're all prepared for it and everything, then it happens, right? So, no, the guys do a great job, so, no doubt.
Well, there's definitely times when we need another blade of snow argument there.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of times, I mean, we could all use something.
And then Mike and Gary on here in that stumper, 99 stumper trailer to replace. Either one of you or both of you want to address that one? Thanks, Roxy.
That one?
Thank you, Roxy.
Okay, we all know what's going on in Sioux Falls right now with Emerald Ash Borer.
Yes.
So we are evaluating the trees and we're gonna start removing probably a lot of the ash trees that are damaged, storm damaged, everything else. The current stumper we have is in, what did you say, 99?
Yep.
So, and it's a two-wheel system. We replaced a lot of stuff on it last year. It's just basically worn out. I mean, if we get a bigger stumper, we remove more stumps. There's still a lot of stumps that need to be removed from last year or the year before. So, finding somebody to run it is another thing. So, speeding it up to have a bigger, stronger stumper to try to relieve some of the work pressure too, or somebody to man it all the time too, is what trouble too. I don't think I can find it here. We
It's,
have different codes, but there's a lot of different stumpers out there. You can get walk
Yes.
behind ones, you can get pull behind ones, you can get 25 force, you can get 75 force, I mean, it all depends. This is probably in the middle of the stumper, what we budgeted for. In the middle of the three different stumpers that we were 25 force, walk behind one still, so we can still get it into some tighter places, but.
yeah, I was just out in Bozeman, Montana, and observed them using one out there, and it was a walk behind. And then they had a three-sided screen that they put there, that kept the chips right close to it. So I took a good look at it, and it worked well. And basically, one-man operation.
And this one's a Kohler, and it's got a ton of hours on the motor and stuff.
And then the next item down there is snow blower for the skid loader.
Yeah.
On that one there, is that one that you would use like on the sidewalks?
In city sidewalks, we're gaining city sidewalks
Yes.
every year, more and more miles of city sidewalks.
Yes.
There's some places where the sidewalk was put in next to the road,
Mhm.
and it is practically impossible to get rid of the snow, so we gotta ask them to pull it. And we have a rear-mounted snow blower for the tractor that we use, so after you back up for 8 hours with it, back up, turn around, looking back,
Mhm.
you can't look forward for a day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So,
there's some stuff, we looked at some other ones, and we got a snow blower out there for sale, but it wouldn't fit. So, we gotta get the right one for the schedule that we have, so.
How's that six-way plow? Don't you have a six-way plow
Yes.
on tractor?
Yeah, but
How's that work?
it works great it works great for like the intersections, like after the snowplow goes by, you can cut them and windrow, push it off to the side and stuff. That definitely has its use, but with the addition of more and more sidewalk, we're gonna have to have more equipment to do them.
Where do you blow it? Out on the street?
Well, along Highway 30,
Is Gary okay with
along
that?
Highway 34 though, you're gonna have to blow it onto the street before they come along and pick it up, because there are some of these homes that don't have much yard, any place to put it. So.
You guys don't blow that? No, we don't do 34. We don't do the highways.
You don't do the highway sidewalks at all?
No,
Okay.
that's the homeowner.
So that's just up to Gary, and Gary windrows that off to the middle, and then we pick it up with the big one and take it in, okay?
It's like up by the dog park, any place that there's bridges and stuff, sometimes that plow, you can't get that plow in there. And actually that plow, if there's a high incline next to the sidewalk, the plow will dig in and pretty soon you're peeling sod out and everything else. So. But this last snowstorm, we learned a lot that we didn't have the right equipment to do the city sidewalks. And it took us 3 days to try to get the sidewalks done. It usually takes about 8 hours to finish.
Why is it curbside at the dog park?
It goes up over the bridge. Over there.
Well, we could have built a bridge there.
And then if you slide off, you go the wrong way, you're in the creek. So you gotta be pretty careful.
Man, that,
That's the ones you're talking about where they come for the creek crossing.
Yeah, and there's certain spots, other spots where it runs fairly close, where if you get 12 inch snow, it's gonna be 2 foot deep on your sidewalk.
Then going further down the list in that, under solid waste in that, Gary, garbage truck replacement you're looking at. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on what it is that you're looking to
Looking at
replace this in a little bit?
possibly going to
Thanks, Mike.
fully automated. There's still some issues that we have to iron out, whether it's gonna work or not, but fully automated, you take one guy instead of two,
Mhm.
it'll free up some available labor. But we haven't nailed it down on all the specifics yet, but that's the kind of where we're headed. Is a lot of people are out of town, are headed that direction.
Mhm.
Save some workers' comp claims. Just if they just drive along the curb line and pick up the cans. And we did try one out. And it was we put it in the tightest alleys we could find. And so far it was working. There's just some other issues that we need to iron out on that. But
And actually, we tried out two, didn't we? And we
Yes.
found that one worked quite well, and the other one had some issues.
yes,
I remember that.
and there's a few more out there, a few more designs I'd like to look at. I
Mhm.
don't have it nailed down to one, but like I said, the one works really well, the other one not so much. So.
And, you know, for the news and general public and that, this would be a garbage truck that would have a mechanical arm that would pick the garbage can up and dump it actually into the truck. And so the operator would be able to stay inside the vehicle rather than currently we have one that rides along behind that physically has to pick it up, empty it into the back of the truck, and then put the garbage can back on the ground. And that's where we talk about, you know, the lifting and labor and you know, and the injuries and that occur from just the, you know, the weather and the circumstances of the job. So, and the other thing in that is that when this one was purchased, and that the city got a good deal on it because it was so large, but it's also created, you know, some other issues for us because it's so large. So I think that's part of the reason you're looking at it something
Yeah.
different as well.
Yeah, tears a lot of the streets up.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
a lot of the approaches to the alleys that are crumbling, that's
Mhm.
that's a major difference with all that. So.
What size yard or truck are you looking at?
It'd be
18?
small, about 20.
18,
We're at
20?
25 now. And that's
Yeah,
too much weight
that's
for the
too much.
streets. You can get them in any size you want, but they say that you need a little larger truck for the fully automated.
Mhm.
But the truck itself, to start with, is lighter. So that's where we're running into trouble. This truck here is so heavy before you put any garbage in it, it's just, by the time you get it full, it's just tearing up the streets, so.
And we did put overload axles on it,
Yeah.
but if you're turning a corner on an alley, that just works like a plow and makes things worse instead of better, so.
And so the streets themselves, and Bob just goes in some spots as has Gary, when we make some turns in these streets, it's just, you can see where it's just creating holes in it, so. And then Gary approached me about something yesterday, I don't think we want to go into it today, right now, another option too about a smaller truck and other things that might work with that.
Well, years ago, we call them satellite trucks where you drive with, you still have 2 people on it. And now we have probably 90%, everybody has a can. So the can will tip in the truck. So this truck would drive around and you fill it up probably twice a day and dump it into that big truck. And the big truck would just be used for taking it to the-
Transportation.
Yeah, for food, so.
Because we are hauling from Madison to Brookings,
Yes.
so the,
You spend a little more time dumping it from one truck to the other, but I think you save time because you can turn that little truck right around on the street versus going around the block. It has its issues too, that snow, it's kind of hard to get around. You know, it's a little light for that. I think we had it have a time, but back when we had one, we threw everything by hand and it was kind of high. So we were worried about workers' comp claims in, so they got.
right.
Going to the cans is a way to get away from the workman's comp.
Yes.
But kudos to your staff, because we haven't had a garbage workman's comp claim for years.
Good.
But when we had that other little garbage truck, you got more than 5 inches of snow in the alleys. You wasn't going through there with that.
It's just
It
another
was
option
just
that
a-
just kind of came up recently.
Where you got a bigger truck, it will go through there. Until they get the alleys cleaned out, you know, we gotta look at, do we wanna tie up our garbage outfit till they get time to go through the alleys on? That's something that we gotta look at.
Can we
Well,
stick a plow in the
I
new
think
one?
In the interest of moving along here, I don't want to get us too tied down to this, because we want to make a reserve, we want to authorize, what we want Public Works to be able to do is be authorized to spend money on the truck at this point, as we designated at this point.
Yes.
We may not buy the one that we say, obviously, we would come back to the commission and present what our final decision is. We have a lot of discussion to do yet about what we really want and need, but we do know we want to get rid of that destroyer.
The big one.
Yeah, the big one, because that is creating more trouble than we could ever possibly let out. The other question that might be worth addressing is, so if we only had one person running the garbage truck, are we eliminating a position? Absolutely not. If you've been out to the recycling center the last, I don't know, we're starting to get that cleaned up, but one of the things we've got to do is do a better job of staying on top of some of those kinds of things, and we use the person who's not on the truck to do some of those kind of things still, and keep us moving ahead on that. So we're not asking to, I want to make it clear that we're not eliminating a position here, the garbage route, we're just doing it differently, so,
If it was
Free enough to support.
yeah.
the fully automated, the citizens have to do something different with their containers.
That's where we're still,
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's
if you
our-
dump it,
that's what-
and, you know, if
ideally
it's,
you'd want it all on the curb, but it's
Yeah.
not gonna work out that way.
if it's sitting in the grass on the terrace, and then the thing might tip over, and then,
That part wouldn't bother so much, because we've tried everything. It gets a little tight up by the college with our cans in between cars, stuff like that.
right.
That's why you don't really wanna jump on the bandwagon, take them out of the alleys, because they're just some areas are just nowhere to put
Right.
it, you know, so.
That's what I was thinking, like, how would that work?
So
okay,
that's
good.
one of the
Yep.
factors that goes into deciding which
bet.
is best, what's going to work best for us is
Good
what's
luck
going to limit the
figuring
most of
it
the
out.
problems. So.
I guess I just would like to say one thing on the garbage truck and the sweeper and the snow blower. Make sure we get what we want. Our wants and our needs has got to be put to the needs, and We just don't go out and buy something just to say, yeah, we got a new truck and then it don't work. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
So-
I think they're digging into it, it's their deal.
Brad?
The only point I want to make was that the Pier 4 Pier area had private haulers that had the automated trucks, and they buy the lightest truck they can, and then they overload them. So then you got it overloaded on one axle instead of two, or multiples, and then you can see where they stopped every time, and that arm reaches out, that whole truck goes like this, puts all the weight on that right side single, and then you have cratered asphalt. You can see everywhere they stop, pretty much, and you had to build your streets extremely strong in the non-traveled lanes to hold up to the garbage trucks. So they don't reduce necessarily all the wear and tear. They concentrate it in little areas where they stop and reach out. And you watch the machines, and that's one of the things that I suggest you do in evaluate them is when that arm reaches out, see how far that machine tips. And if it's tipping quite a ways, you're putting all that weight in that one dual, and that really hammers the road. So, and you stop in the same spot every time. And that's the other thing, it's just repetitive damage. So they're not. I want to caution everybody that they may not solve all the street wear and tear problems.
Thank you.
We are too suggesting that they're going to use the depreciation reserve, 199,553, and that will wipe out that reserve. So there will be no more depreciation reserve in the solid waste department. We'll have to start rebuilding that in 2020.
What's the status of accounts? Have been gaining a few, losing, holding steady?
It's pretty steady.
We picked some up last year from that.
Yeah, we usually gain a lot of cans at the end of college. When college gets out, we get a lot of stops, and we didn't have a lot of that this year. So, holding pretty steady on that.
There might have been a slight increase, but for the most part, because actually.
I agree, Roxy. Yep, there's a slight increase. I have it here. I can say exactly how many there are. I find it.
Well, I've heard Bud's actually started charging for his service, so I was wondering if that would have an effect.
You better look out.
10% increase just by figuring the billing out.
Well, I think on here we've pretty much asked the questions in that hit your department.
We hit you hard, Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
FYI, you have 989 total 65-gallon carts and 387 95-gallon carts.
One more time. You said?
989, 65, and then of the 95, the larger one's 387.
Thank you.
And that's what we did our revenue projection.
What's the price difference?
1650, or no, excuse me, 1925. No, try again. 19 for the 95-gallon and 1625 for the 65-gallon.
If I had it my way, we just only use the small carts.
Well, if my kids would remember to bring it around, I could go with the small
He
one.
said, yeah, but if you start just using the small ones, you start leaving the lid open and jamming things down, and so there's problems with that. Only my hope was that if we just use the small ones, we'd encourage more recycling. But that's just me, guys. Myself.
It's not just you. We need to encourage more recycling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We lose out on the sale of the recycling, and we pay extra to put it in the dump. So
And
the
the
citizens,
trips to the dump.
citizens get hit twice by not recycling. So,
There's really three expenses to that. There's the picking it up, then there's the driving it there, the expense of that, and then there's an actual tipping fee in the dump. And more that tipping fee and the driving we can eliminate.
There was a great article in the paper this week. If you haven't read it, I recommend you check it out.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
do we have anything for the police chief? He needs to,
Yes.
I think we already talked about the police car.
You have the police. Justin, we've already basically discussed your 2015 Charger that's going to be traded in. It's got 90,000 plus miles on it and has spent numerous times in the shop for repairs. And so with that kind of mileage and the history of that vehicle, it's scheduled for replacement. I don't know that we have anything else on here that is, pertinent to your department. So if you didn't have anything you wanted to add to it.
The only thing that I'll add is the Lake County 911. That's every year we contribute to help out with that. Julie Wagner is retiring, in case you guys didn't see the news, and honestly, that's a pretty critical position. We hope that we can get somebody into that position. She's been there for many, many years, 20 plus probably, and so that's a critical position, not just for us, but also for the Lake County deputies as well, Sheriff's Department. So.
And we have budgeted the same amount for that line item for quite some time, which is nice too. It doesn't fluctuate much for us. We do have to pay half of their expenses. They actually send us itemized statements twice a year. But it has been steady at that 120.
Right. Right around there.
All right. Anything else you can see on that department? Okay. Thank you, Justin. So,
Say if you want.
yeah. Aaron, I see Aaron is here and that. We really haven't talked much about your budget and that. Did you want to address that now?
Yeah, if you guys want to talk about the capital outlay project. We've got.
I did mention, excuse me a minute, I did mention that these long, big worksheets that you have seen in years past, they are all posted out on the website. I sent you a link yesterday. These are all in draft format, and as we continue to make changes, we will repost, okay?
Sounds
so
good.
you're itemized line by line, if you're so interested, are all hanging out there, okay? Go ahead, sorry.
No problem, thanks. For fitness equipment, we've got $56,000 planned budget this year for expenses. We're basically about the third phase of about a 3-year upgrade to our kind of wellness area. 3 years ago, we upgraded all our strength training equipment that we funded through our operations cash and then also through donations. We are just, this year we're doing kind of a second phase of all our cardiovascular machines. We're replacing 8 of our cardiovascular machines to upgraded units with upgraded consoles, which is going to cost about $42,000 if we're spending down our cash to fund that project as well. And then, so next year would be the second half of the cardiovascular equipment, which would be about another $45,000 of equipment, cardiovascular equipment upgrade purchases. And then the other $11,000 is just kind of miscellaneous type equipment that we just pretty much budget for our operations and upgrading. We also started a new cross-edge program at the beginning of the year too. We got $5,000 of equipment that will help to replenish the use of that equipment that gets used pretty much daily. And then the second capital outlay project we're looking at is with the Life 4 project. Life 4 is a rubberized flooring is installed in water parks, ship cruises, in their kind of the water areas. And one of our challenges right now is in our pool area, we've got the 2-inch by 2-inch tile. This Life 4 would go over the top of this tile area where we see most of our falls and slips from patrons. And the Life 4 product would cover this area, just kind of make it a much safer area, not only for foot traction, but also if you did fall, you'd be falling on a rubberized versus a concrete and tile. And the Life 4 product, it's manufactured right here in Madison at Falcon Plastics, which is a great benefit. The business is out of Minnesota. They're giving us about a 30% discount because it's manufactured here in Falcon. And we're still kind of working on with them to get finalized pricing for it. We're hoping that they'll even kind of on our request to kind of give us a bigger discount and kind of making the community center a showplace center for when they do have customers in the area. They can bring them here to Madison. They can go through the manufacturing process through Falcon, and they also can stop at the community center and kind of see the product from start to finish. So we think that'd be a value to them and also a value to us and our customers. So that project right now, the total request that we have for that was $80,000. Our governing board is will make that request for our four-person budget and personnel committee to have that funded out of the major maintenance reserve. And if it's funded out of that, the city would be responsible for 60% of that cost. DSU would fund the other 40%.
Okay, so the 48% is only the 60% of the total project?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. I did get that, thank you.
If the project was put in place, I foresee it going forward like as previous projects that we use the major maintenance reserve for. DSU would kind of administer the project, they would pay for it, and then the city
But remembering that that comes out of our general fund, major maintenance reserve, and then every year we have to pay that back. And we are
Yes.
still paying back from.
From a couple
previous
years ago.
projects. Yep. I
So.
believe that's due to be discussed too at the Budget and Personnel Committee
Correct, yeah.
meeting that we'll have in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. And, you know, we're starting to look at with the facility entering this, you know, will be entering its 20 years of age here shortly. You know, last 2 or 3 years we've been starting doing some of the upgrades. A lot of mechanical upgrades is what we use the major maintenance reserve for through our control systems about 4 or 5 years ago. This past year we replaced our air conditioning unit. That's what we used for it last year. So our board is going to be currently working on some facility renovation projects to kind of get our facility ready to go here for the next 20 years. When the facility was built, most of our programming was just kind of derived around members coming in and utilizing the facility. Times have changed. We invested more in the programming side of it, and programming takes space, and you know, that's one of our biggest challenges right now is finding space for all the programming and services that we offer. So, you know, going through the next 10-year period, we're going to be trying to look at ways we can set our facility up to make sure we can meet our members' needs for, you know, for the next 20+ years. So you know, long story short, that use of that major maintenance reserve, I foresee kind of those projects still, you know, coming forward as we move forward. And our goal is to be able to help kind of provide a summarized plan for the 4-person board at our next meeting.
Jen, what do we still owe for that?
I believe we have to put more in this year.
If she's looking at.
Yes, please continue on
For
my
that,
report.
yeah, well, you know, the question has come up about the flooring. Is that a maintenance issue or is that a enhancement issue? And so, because with it coming out of that major maintenance reserve, you know, we gotta instantly pay that right back, and so that's kind of the question that.
We have to, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, go
We
ahead.
have to put in 2019 budget, we have to put in $32,375 back into that reserve, and then, gentlemen, I believe we are close.
You guys remember how that, we have to keep that certain amount?
$450,000 is our responsibility in that reserve. We've got X amount, don't quote me, we've got X amount of years to always pay that back.
And then DSU has to maintain 300 and some thousand.
I don't know. Yeah, that sounds.
And that is the same
I
thing.
just, again, is it the bond that holds us to that commitment, to that?
No,
It's the.
it's the state.
The agreement, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a state agreement.
Okay, but in other words, there's a power greater than ourselves that
Yes,
says you gotta hold it to a certain level.
yes.
Yeah.
And then anytime money is spent out of that, we have a certain period of time that
Yeah.
we have to pay back
Get up to
our
some.
share into ours, and DSU has to pay back their share into theirs.
Thank you.
But you have to have that minimum amount on hand at all times, and that for, capital maintenances that need to be done.
Kind of, I guess my question is with major maintenance reserve, I mean, it's 48,000, but, I mean, are we running it, would it be better for us to run it through that, because then we can pay 20,000 over the next couple of years to pay that back, or is it just better off, I mean, we gotta pay it anyway, so
Or
what's
is there-
easier, or what's
Or
the
is there
right way
cash
to do it?
flow from the community center that could be used to cover it?
You know, we budget annually to break even right now, so that it would be pretty tight. If it wasn't funded through the major maintenance reserve, our board could look at funding it through some current, you know, the reserves that the community center has right now is just from basically net cash at the end of the year that we usually, if we have any net cash at the end of the year, for the reserve. So that would be an option one. You know, our
Which
cash
is already
account.
60/40.
Our cash account right now is, you know, is
You have cash
healthy.
in front of you
It's
on your
about-
sheet there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's like
estimate, yeah.
250,000, 230,000, right around there. So that could be another option, but, you know, with our cash account, we have been spending that down, and we plan on continue spending that down for, you know, kind of for fitness equipment, cardiovascular equipment. Essentially that 56,000 that we have for fitness equipment, we plan on using kind of that cash money to fund the majority of that, so.
I'm showing almost 400,000.
I think 98,000 was part of the reserve, is a.
This includes
Our
reserves.
reserve, yeah.
This includes reserves.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Okay, so,
The small reserve that you would have within the community center.
Correct, yeah.
Is it, can I ask, I mean, would it, if you funded it through your cash reserves, you likely wouldn't be able to receive the 40% contribution from DSU?
That's in there.
that cash reserve is already 60/40 because it's community center cash. So it's already,
So
it's either,
both entities already have it in there then.
it's either 60/40 cash from DSU and or it's cash from membership fees. So it's
We have to
still
pay any
income.
shortfall. The 60/40 comes in with any
Any
shortfall.
shortfalls, and so,
But I think we need to respectfully watch what it is that we're taking out of this major maintenance reserve too, because we have to put 32,375 back in it in 2019. We also have to put 32,372 back in it in 2020 to get it back to 450. If we tap it for another 48, then you divide that, and agree, we got a 14-year-old building that, right, we're
I mean,
gonna
there's a
likely
lot of
have
other problems
major.
that could go
Correct.
on, and
And
then
if you
we're
pull
gonna
the
get
joint
stuck.
powers agreement, it talks about major maintenance being complete sewer reconstruction, a whole new roof, those
Air
kinds of
conditioner.
things.
Heating and air
If we
conditioning.
continue to deplete this reserve, 40,000 at a time, we just need to make sure that
Mhm.
we have what we need when we need
Don't you
major
have 10
maintenance.
years to replace that though?
It's not
Technically,
Yeah.
We do, but with it being almost 20 years old, something big happens
right,
and
but
we're,
then you can at least spread it out. Instead
Right.
of putting 32 a year, you can.
What I'm putting in
15 or
is the
10.
minimum. And this is as
Well,
per
and
a
when you
meeting
read,
with myself
when
and
you
Stacy
read that
Kuchma, we
powers
both know
agreement,
what
it
we have
doesn't
to
give
have.
you a long length of time. It came into interpretation, and so as we sat down and discussed it, we interpreted it so that we could, get by putting in this amount instead of 100,000 a year back into it. So there's a little bit of interpretation in the language. So, but again, it's for, the major maintenance, and major maintenance is spelled out, and so,
And not
you
to
know.
say that this isn't a necessary project, it's just
Yeah,
where do you tap, what do you tap?
Right.
I think it's a good project, but I'm just, I don't know, you guys can tell me, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a major maintenance item. It's an enhancement, for sure.
And
it's-
a
it's
safety
great they're-
enhancement.
They're giving us discounts and I get the whole, it's great, we can help out Falcon, we can help out a local company, all of those things, but at the same time, I don't know that it's a major maintenance item.
so.
The community center does too have two reserves on the books. You have a capital outlay reserve and then a future maintenance reserve that total $98,000. So that may be an avenue that we
Let's just
might
take it
need to
out of
look
one
at
of
too.
those. Take it out of one of those, I mean, to me, that's where it makes the most sense.
Mhm.
But then that's 100% city money as opposed to 60/40, unless we take our 60% out of one of these reserves. Because this would be city money reserves.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Okay, we can talk
I go back to
later.
the makeup on that. But
Maybe we do 60% of that and then, the other cash was 60/40, so.
But you
Talk
said-
with DSU and maybe
Right,
they'll.
during our core person meeting.
Mhm.
That's what I was just gonna ask you, when does that meet next, when are you meeting?
We're looking at Tuesday, right?
No, probably later, probably next Tuesday, a week from this Tuesday.
A week from this coming
Yeah.
Tuesday.
What was that, the 19th, yeah?
Because I had
We scheduled it yesterday.
I had gotten your message, and I had looked at,
Originally, I was thinking Tuesday, but President Griffin's schedule next Tuesday didn't quite cooperate.
Okay, yeah, at this point in time, and that the 18th would be the next following Tuesday, that would work for
Okay,
me
that
as
would-
well.
Okay, perfect.
So,
18th?
18th,
Yeah,
Okay.
1:30.
okay?
One of the other things that we discussed is the efforts to see the community center become more self-sustainable, so we don't have to pull 100,000, 106,000 from the city every year. And so I think that's something that we've all discussed and talked about, to kind of shore that up a little bit, from the standpoint that, you know, to a certain extent, members are getting dinged twice. You know, pay membership fee plus I'm paying taxes on it. And so, because
I believe
think
that,
the community fund is down to 106,000.
176.
Community development,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have that in front of me, Jenna, I'm sorry.
176, yeah. So we got basically a year and a half, and then we gotta find where we're gonna pull that from.
Our contribution, yeah. I do believe that help me out here, the DSU bonds are paid off next year. So Stacy has
I
already
believe so, yeah.
contacted me about starting the discussion about the joint powers agreement and renegotiating that, because their
Changing that.
bonds, right, we paid ours off long ago. Theirs is finally gonna be done, I believe it's in 2019, which is why he's already contacted me.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is to happen this fall.
Yeah, I mean, to have a 7,000 square foot recreational facility in Madison, trying to make it self-sufficient would be about as challenging as any task there would be, especially when you look at the usage and the success of the facility. So, you know, that's kind of news to me, I guess. That information would be great if that would be brought forward to our board, because then we can start looking at that end too. So, but like I said, there would be a lot of challenges behind that. And if that's the desire, I guess, like I said, our board needs to know about that, so we can start looking at what our option is, because that would be kind of a new message, I guess, that we have not heard yet. So.
That would be something that I'd say at this point in time, you know, we wouldn't have any information to really say, you know, how the future is looking until after we, you know, meet this fall.
Sure.
Because initially in that, you know, DSU used student fees and that to pay the bond off. And then it was discussed way back that when the bond was paid off, then those fees would be reallocated to operation. And so those are the discussions in that we'd be looking at.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to that, because I wasn't
Right,
thinking about
yeah.
that, but that's
So
a good
until-
conversation at that 4th.
Until, you know, we get through all of that, you know, we wouldn't have an answer for you now.
Sure.
On that anyway. So.
Have you ever, you know, DSU's looking to the future, wants to build a large athletic complex. How would that change our relationship with DSU if that were to?
I don't think it would change it much at all. I mean, they use our facility athletics for their needs right now that, you know, for basic space, that isn't sufficient for them, but I couldn't foresee it changing what student recreation using the facility at all. I think
Okay.
that student recreation is maintained as normal.
Good.
And Aaron, it's correct that each member, there's no specific member usage fee per the DSU students. They just pay a certain 40% of the budget annually. Whereas our membership, the community center membership, pays a usage fee, and the members pay a fee, whereas DSU doesn't specifically pay it per member, correct?
Well, I mean, DSU students pay a student activity.
To the college, not to the community center.
It gets channeled to the college when it comes to the community center, and then obviously the college moves back, they'll pay for their portion of operation.
They're 40%.
Yeah.
The city already pays 60%. Plus the community center members pay their fees.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of ways, a lot of your expenses are allocated to city services. You know, most of our services are taken advantage by city residents, so, like I said, you could look at a lot, you could pull a lot of different lines, I guess, on which way you want to look at it, so.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Any other questions or comments about Aaron? Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure we will, just
Thanks.
get some
Yes.
advice on the quarter.
No, absolutely. So, Brad?
Can I ask?
Absolutely.
Mike, did you want to come up and just, I wanted to just touch the base with him on a couple
Please
of
do.
things here. Thank you.
Please do.
Wasn't he already up here?
Yeah, but he was so darn good at it.
Yeah. Want to bring you back up again.
What do you want, Mike, what do you want to buy us on playground equipment?
This in the park areas for the Memorial Park playground. Somebody from the we got that grant approved, some person from Madison signed us up for an SDSU football game for a grant, so we got $17,060. The park board suggested that we replace the playground at Memorial Park, and we've had several citizens from the city that wanted that to be improved and upgraded equipment. So the status of that is we budgeted $110,000 for the playground, which would be comparable to the swimming pool park and Bachman Park playground, kind of that size, and it would be all commercial grade playground equipment. So we got $17,000, and then we're applying for that land conservation water grant, and Jen and us, and we're all working together, and that application's due on October 31st.
Yep.
And that is a 50-50 match grant. So, and we've been in touch with First District already about it, just to let everybody know that we're trying to,
And the state, Mr. Kittle,
you know,
knows that our application will be coming, so yes, we're hopeful. I did not, though, FYI, I did not budget. I did offset the $110,000 with the $17,000 for the Wellmark grant, which we've already been awarded. I have not offset any park revenue with any potential.
and have we received that 17,000, Jen?
We have not
Yes.
cash.
Yes, we did. I talked to Kristen earlier this week, and she had gotten a check. She told me she got a check.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was like 2 days ago.
okay, good.
All right, I just wanted to make sure, but, and then we
I will
put
follow
that
up, thank you.
17,000 towards the 50-50 match of the 110. So,
But never mind, I can't budget for revenue in 2019 then if we've already have the cash. I thought they were gonna sit on that cash until we
No,
knew
we had
exactly
to
what we
take-
were doing.
the deal was
Okay.
that they cut the check, but we had to, from Wellmark, but we could use it in 2019.
Right, yeah.
Carry that money over.
Mhm.
is what it was.
Yeah,
So,
because there was a time frame that they wanted it spent on.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we had to have commissioner minutes and all that
Yes.
stuff that we talked about that
Yeah.
maybe earlier.
Yeah, and we've done that, yes.
So, but Kelly just wanted to kind of inform the public and keep them in the loop of what's going on right now. So,
Sounds great.
Okay,
I think I'm good.
so we're looking at that, that might change the compulsory budget a little bit for parks too. That can't be much for 17, 18 is what we need.
Good work getting the grants and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, the conservation grant, that's a big deciding factor. And we all know how we decide that, so.
But we're more hopeful on the playground equipment than we were on the ball field fencing, just looking at their past grant recipients. If you go out there and look, lots
Yes.
of playground equipment. And so we're
Mhm.
a little bit more hopeful, I am anyway, on this one than maybe we were on the other
I
one.
think,
It's a little bit different project.
And that's a park that gets used quite a bit, you know, and so it's always nice when we can upgrade it so the parks can get used more. Kelly?
no, I think we're okay. Is there,
As long as you're in parks, I think Mike is good, but as long as you're in parks, Kelly, do you want to talk about the swimming pool
well,
boards,
yeah.
the boards there?
Oh, yeah, the aqua boards.
The aqua boards? Briefly, as per Ms. Bunker, this would be a new, help me out here, maybe you can help me out here too. This would be a new program that they would offer. You have to buy boards, you have to buy striping of the pools, and it's a new program that could be offered, or would be offered at both the CC and maybe not, maybe I misspoke. Not the CC, but definitely the parks, which is why it's budgeted for under the parks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, aqua boards, if what she's talking about, they kind of look like paddle boards, I guess, essentially. You can write programming, you can do different type of wellness classes off those paddle board things. activities, is that,
It is.
that's what?
It is, yeah, thank you. But again, then you have to line your pool, you have to stripe your pool, which is what the lane liners with the roller. So it comes on some kind of a contraption that you pull out, and then you pull those, makes lanes in your pool so that you can have this program.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of most like what your lily pads are. Where your lily pads are connected together. Way just makes them unstable, so they're, you know, the paddleboard, they're stabilizing for step.
Are they the ones in that you stand up on and paddle like this?
You know, I guess I'm not 100% sure on what exactly what boards.
On what she means with aqua boards, because it says aqua boards, it doesn't say paddle boards. You know?
I think they're similar type items, I guess. I'm
Okay.
not, I guess I'm 100% sure what she's thinking for programming out there, but that's
Sure.
what I would envision them seeing something like.
So. All right. Well, I think, Brad,
Yes, sir.
as we go down a few years and that, you've got lime sledge hauling, that's something that's standard and that we do every year.
Yes.
In there. On the pickup replacement, Unit 69, 2002, would you want to address that?
Yeah, and I think Jan's here too. He can address it if there's any questions on it. We have an older pickup. I don't have the other chart. I should grab my chart. I put charts together for equipment replacement. And the water and sewer, along with Public Works, have had a depreciation account that they have been putting money into as a reserve for replacement of all their vehicles. And in the past, in the last couple of years, they've stepped over or bypassed replacing some of those vehicles. This is one of those vehicles. And I was going to look, see if I find my chart here, because it helped a little bit to show you what we do here. As I was telling Jen yesterday, we have too much paper. This is what the replacement program looks like. Basically, you take all your equipment and you spread it over a number of years and you program it out so that you don't end up with a big glut of equipment on all in one year. So in other words, we want to maintain and have the best quality of equipment that we can have at a reasonable price, and that means you have to do a regular investment. Every year you put an investment in your equipment, so you don't end up with a situation where you skip several years, and then all of a sudden, oh gee, I need this, and this, and oh, by the way, Commission, I need $500,000 to buy all this equipment because it all needs to be replaced now. So the idea is to try to flatten that out, make a continual investment. And so we program these out. Two of these pickups were passed over in the past, would like to put them, that's what these blue markers are up here, that's the two pickups, one of them. One of them was passed over because they just put a new engine in it a few years before that. That's the Ford. I believe that's a 2000 and it was supposed to have been replaced in 2012.
One here has 2004 GMC and
Yep.
the other one says 2002
2002.
Chevy.
Okay. 68. Okay.
Unit
68 and 69. Yeah, 2002.
1968.
Excuse me. I got on the wrong line there with that Ford. Yeah, the 2004 is number 68 and the 2002 is number 69. And they both have similar mileage. They're in the 70-some thousand mile range. They've been used in the field. One of the reasons to replace the one is it's a half-ton, and we anticipate with the new personnel to do the sewer lining and all that stuff, we need to have a 3/4 ton to have all the equipment that's going to be used on that one. So that one needs to be upgraded just for that purpose. The other one is getting a lot of miles, just used back and forth between the two different plants, and it's getting fairly wore out. It doesn't go very far, but it goes there pretty often every day back and forth between plants and a little bit around the area. And I've been in it. It still runs, it still drives, but we're getting to the point to where it's gone to the bottom of its value and it's going to stay there. It's not going to really change much. It's based on wear and tear. Now it's not a miles thing. And both vehicles were requested to be replaced by the foreman in those departments.
One in water, one in sewer.
One in sewer,
One
yes.
water and one sewer.
And And FYI, it will be our goal after we get through the budget
Yes.
process and start Tyler Tech and to his little pretty worksheet there, make that a citywide project, that all of our police cars, all of our equipment, everything that we're running, that we're ensuring, that we're keeping track of, is all on a replacement schedule. We roll it into a capital improvement plan, and we've got an ongoing documentation of what needs to be replaced every single year.
And to put a finer point on that, when I first started in my previous position at the city of Fort Pierre, when I got there, maybe 35% of the equipment worked. And, you know, in order to go use something, you'd have to send it to the repair shop first. So you'd have to plan not only when you wanted to do something, you had to plan, okay, I got to do these repairs to this piece of equipment ahead of time.
Scheduling 2 weeks of repairs.
Exactly. And then, you know, and so it was, I'm not kidding you, if there had been a fire come over the hill and we needed to move all the equipment out, only about 35% would have rolled out the door when I first got there. So we hired a full-time mechanic, put this type of process together, and then when the flood came in 2011, we ran 24 hours a day for 3 months, and all the equipment ran. We still had some minor repairs, don't get me wrong, but if the flood would have came when I started at the city of Fort Pierre, we'd have been in serious, serious trouble. So I realize that it's hard sometimes to tell the public, oh, we replaced this pickup. It's only, you know, well, in 2002, it's 16 years old. It's not a brand-new vehicle. But it may not have that many miles on it, but the thing is, we're responsible for public safety. And we have to have good quality equipment. We have to have good, capable equipment. And that's what we're trying to do with this program, is set out up schedules that everything gets replaced at a regular basis so that we are capable. We have the best capabilities that we can afford, not the least cost. We can get cheaper capabilities, and we can go cheaper, but we won't have the best. And what I want to do for the public is they're putting money into us every year. I'd like to get the best we can afford, so that's why we do this. We put this chart together. We do a scheduled replacement, and then you keep the best equipment that we can afford. Then we don't end up with a big glut of $500,000 or $600,000 down the road when we've deferred purchases, because that's where we were at in Fort Pierre when I first started, and we had to suck it up and had to buy quite a few pieces of equipment to get up to where we were capable, but it paid off at the time when we needed it. So that's my cautionary tale of deferring vehicles. So.
Well, and the other thing is the first time you start a vehicle, the first 5 miles are the hardest on it. That's why, you know, you see the semi-drivers and the long-term drivers and that, they may stop for 10, 15 minutes, but the vehicle stays running, you know, because the hardest wear and tear is getting it from being cold to warmed up.
Mm-hmm.
So the vehicle that started and only driven to the grocery store twice a week, and that isn't necessarily your best buy, even though it's got the lowest miles on it. You get to spend a lot more time knowing your mechanic personally.
For the unit number 69, that one, the money would come out of a depreciation reserve. There's enough money in the reserve account to cover that 100%. So there's no new money or no rate money coming out per se. You know, it all comes from the reserve. Again, the reserve has been built up over a number of years.
Yes.
Make annual, you know, deposits into that. So this is just taking some out now to replace that vehicle.
And then would it be the same with Unit 68?
Yes.
Yes.
And we are going to apply the surplus to the account, basically, if you will. Typically, revenue is colorless. You don't consider that as part of the deal, but because there is value in equipment, we try to apply the surplus back to the water and the sewer so that that comes back into us. So,
Meaning we're budgeting for the surplus of these vehicles.
Right.
Right, so
we're budgeting for that income.
right. Water, electric, sewer.
Yep.
And then, now the Derrick digger, was that yours or was that Gary's and I missed it?
The digger derrick?
It's electric.
That's electric. That'd be mine.
Okay. You want to address that one?
Sure. Right now, and it might seem kind of funny that it shows a 77. That is one that we have that's in the back shed. We don't use it very often, but we keep it as a if you will, the spare, because there's times where you need more than one. And so we kept the old one when we got the current one, which is, I believe, a 2000. What we'd like to do is replace this one, move the 2000 back to the reserve, and then, you know, buy a newer, bigger digger derrick. The thing is, in our current shop, we're limited on height and size. And so a digger derrick is a little bit bigger truck because it's made to pick and lift things. Well, we have to downsize it so much that the one we got isn't capable of lifting half of what we have. and it doesn't do as much as what we really need it to do. So the idea would be to get the right-sized one, because we're moving to a facility where we can house it now, and we can have a fully capable truck. So we don't have to have East River coming in and all these other things, people coming in to help us and having a schedule around their schedule to do the work that we need to do, because we can't pick up transformers, we can't, move poles and do different things, because the truck we got was reduced in size so it would fit in our shop. And that's kind of the part of the reason we'll keep that as a spare, because it's better than the old one. It's, out in the back, because it's a small one too. And then have this newer, bigger, better truck that can do all the work that we need to do as we go through the future.
Is the 77 worth anything? Is there any surplus to be budgeted for there? Are we keeping it, or are we getting rid of it?
Well, we would get rid of it, and I hate to say it, but you take it to a state sale or something like that, get on an auction, it'd bring $1,500, $2,000 maybe. It's maybe a little more, but it's timed out for most people. They aren't going to give you a lot of money for it. It's just, it's not a real attractive unit at that age. I mean, it's still capable. There'll be somebody that will want it to use it for something. It may not be obviously for electric, but it could be somebody at a farm or a ranch that wants to have that lifting capability or something out of an older unit. But
the intent still would be to surplus it and get rid of it
Yes.
next door.
Yes.
Note too that there's a $130,000 Digger Derrick reserve that will be applied. That will also wipe out that reserve, and then we'll start replenishing that in 2022.
And the rest would come out of our annual appropriations, if you will, cash for that.
On here, you've got a Trimble.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask for definition too to begin with on that one.
Trimble is a company that makes survey equipment.
Got it.
And so this would be another GPS unit, handheld, to be out in the field, to augment the other two that we have in the city right now. The electric has one, the engineers have one, and then this would be one for water and sewer. We're investing a lot in the mapping, as we talked the other day, that as everybody's, people are leaving the city that have all the knowledge up here, and we want to try to get it out of their heads and onto the maps, and so we're trying to do that before this guy just walks off and evaporates on us here in another few years, because he's going to be in the same shape as everybody else, even though, we don't think of ourselves as being old. Right, Jan? We're getting close, and so we have to start planning for that day when all the knowledge walks out the door, and we have people that don't know what's in the system because they weren't there when they put it in. So we want to get as much as we can. We got to get as much out of Bob before he's, goes away from the city or whatever. And so we want to try to get everything we can into the mapping so that it can be there for a legacy system for somebody else to come along.
We've already had surprises.
Yes,
Oh.
and we still will. I mean, you can't see through the ground.
Yes. Yeah, and that's an understatement.
Yeah, we had one just yesterday
Yes,
in the electric, so it happens.
it does. So, rotary manhole sprayer.
There's a few years ago, I don't know exactly when, probably 3 or 4, the sewer department purchased a manhole lining system. It's more or less a pressure grout system that you can spray on. The current system requires a person to be down in the manhole, so you clean the manhole up and then you go down in the manhole and you spray this stuff on and then trowel it out and smooth it up. That requires a lot of people, because you have to have someone tending the machine, someone tending the operator down in there, and then the operator. And they have to be on a tripod with a hoist, electric hoist, to pull them out in case they become overcome with the gas, because you got to be able to get them out immediately in a confined space. This eliminates having that person down in the hole as much as possible. I mean, we'll still have to do some work down in the manhole because you have to do the inverts. There's some of the manholes don't have inverts poured in them, so we have to go in there and cast concrete and create flow lines between the piping and have a ramp on either side so the solids don't build up in your manhole. There's several of those we have to do. I don't know the number because we haven't done the full-fledged evaluation yet. That's something that they've done a lot of the GIS work, is number of manholes, where they're at, some of the depths and everything, but I didn't see anything for the most part noted that there were no inverts on that yet, so we have to go through that, and it's in the notes section of the GIS system, but there's going to be quite a few of those, but we'd like to be able to put this rotary sprayer. It just drops a spray gun down in there, and it works on a screw, and it just works its way up as it sprays the manhole, and you line the manhole with that, and that reduces the amount of time anybody has to be down in the manhole, and it reduces the number of operators. So the idea was to get as much of this manhole lining done as we can without having to add more people, even more people than what we need to, so.
And then along with that was the camera locator.
That one's a little different. That's the, for service lines, and we want to have the ability to go through service lines and see where problems are. We have a camera that fits on the jetter that we can do, rudimentary evaluation of the main line, but you can't do anything on the service lines. You need to be able to come from the service side down, either through a clean out or a toilet or something like that that allows you access to the sewer system, and evaluate where the problems might be. We get involved with quite a few service line issues, and it's hard to know what they are, and it's hard to sometimes, when we're planning, know where the sewers are, like on the highway. We found that out on 34 on 2nd.
Right, I talked to him about that one.
And so some of this would help us on those types of things. It's probably not going to be the highest used item we have, but the nice thing about this one, it's traceable. A lot of times, we've got the locators, we can send a signal down them, and you can go out there and follow the line, because the old sewer lines are made of non-metallic material, and the new ones too, but we're putting tracer lines in on the new ones, so we can trace them. But the old ones didn't have that, so you've got this, something that was put in back in 1900 something, and you have no idea where it's going. And we found there's times where they did things like they put a 90-degree angle in them, and you don't know it, and you can't find it. And so then they have a problem, and you're like, well, where's the problem? Well, we don't know. And so it's hard to find that stuff. So this is a way to do that. And the camera gives you the ability to see physical issues inside there on top of it.
Well, on our water lines, they're operating under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a problem with a connection and that it shows up as a water leak. In the sewer system, we know that when we are having our heavy rains, that we've got infiltration. And, that shows up out at the treatment plant by the volume of water increase, and that just from the rains.
Certainly.
So if we can find some of those issues in the non-pressurized sewer system and repair some of those issues, we may be able to help alleviate some of these citizens in that have sewer backup.
And
because infiltration definitely shows up after hard rains.
Well, even just, you've got I and I both, the infiltration and the inflow. And the inflow is probably they're both bad, but the one is continuous, and it's easier to find sometimes. But as we go through and we start doing all this televising that we're planning on doing starting next year, we're going to find things that we want to investigate. And the way we'll have to do that is with a camera that goes down the services, because if the water's coming in off of a service and they're not doing anything in the home, we need to find out where it's coming in. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing, but you'll see a little, if you watch a television camera in the sewers, and you'll see a little stream. It's just tiny, smaller than a pencil, coming out the sidewall of that. That can be 20 to 50,000 gallons a day. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how much just tiny little leaks add up. And we just had a customer here yesterday that had called and was concerned about their water usage, and they'd used up 80,000 gallons in a month, and they typically don't use but about 4 or 5, and they had a toilet that was hanging up every now and then and running. Mm-hmm. A toilet with a real small dribble you see coming in, there's 20,000 gallons a month. Yep. So anything in the sewer that's leaking is huge, because we have to treat that water. So if we can find those things as we go through and televise, we're going to need to have the ability to find those leaks. If they're in the service lines, we need to get them fixed. If they're in our main line, we'll fix them, with lining or whatever we have to do, pressure grout to fix the system. But if they're on the service lines, we need to know where they're at and what they need to do to fix them. So this will help us.
Oh, very good. Do you see something else on there that I haven't addressed yet? Because I'm going.
There's a fair amount of stuff in there. Obviously, we're two things that have really impacted the budget this year from our operational standpoint outside of projects, and that is the inclusion of the Encode software and the renovation of the new building. Those two things are going to deduct from what we're going to be able to do for projects this year. Hopefully, in a couple of years, when we get everything all settled out there, it'll really pay out, and, you know, we're going to be a lot more efficient. The Encode software, I can't wait. Jen can't wait.
to get started.
Right.
Let's go.
Next year's budget process is going to be completely different than this year's, because
Wow.
it should be,
Going away.
yeah, it should be automated. It should be on your desktop. It should be something that's done as you go through the year. Every single day, there will be a budget module that we can update. And so I'm anticipating, if it works even half as good as I anticipate it's going to work, we should be a lot better, a lot cleaner. So, but that has an impact, and we're, you know, it's coming out of cash, and that reduces what we do. And then the renovation of the building. It should, you know, serve us for the next 50-ish years, I'd hope. I mean, it's a steel frame building. All you'd have to do is replace the exterior, maybe freshen it up a little bit inside. It should last for a long, long, long time, barring a fire or a tornado. Those are the two things I see being a big issue with that building. But other than that, a Type 2B building just lasts and lasts and lasts. And so I don't see a big issue there with the investment. So, but it costs a lot of money to renovate.
Well, and the other thing is that, you know, the city had been budgeting annually and that for a single building to replace the 1919 building that, you know, you've been operating in. And with this purchase from East River, we not only got a single building, but we got 2 other buildings and 5 acres adjoining the 4 acres of the public works. So it gives Madison a 9-acre complex. It allows us to secure all of the supplies that currently sit outside, gives us a place to put things inside. It was one of the smartest moves for the dollar and that, you know, that we could have made, and I want to thank you for working with us on that and getting, you know, and thank East River too, because
Yes.
it worked out best for both. And so Madison will have a 9-acre complex, and that, you know, that will service them 50 years down the road. I've had a concern ever since the hospital built with the small vehicles and that, the small, building, and having to back out blindly onto Union Avenue. That's been a huge safety issue. Not to mention we've had to purchase vehicles that fit the building rather than what fit the need of the city. So
Yes, sir.
it's something that I'm excited and looking forward to see us in it and in operation.
Do note that within your budget, you will see a municipal utility building renovation line, and then also a municipal utility building equipment and furniture.
Furniture,
So we
right.
have split up those costs so that they're capitalized appropriately, depreciated out correctly in due time, and you will see those notations in the water and the electric and the sewer costs.
And the furnishings, just, you know, it's not just for office furniture, it also goes to pay for the networking, the security system, all those types of things are in there, so.
No, very good.
Do we want to discuss rural development at all, or?
Go for it.
Well, I don't, but.
Yeah. Sounds good. 5 minutes?
Yeah, just.
5-minute break? Oh, certainly. Yes. Yeah, sometimes the latter calls. So, Kelly can hear you in that. Brad, you want to go back to Unit 68? I think we were just visiting with them there.
Yeah, Jan came up to me here on the break and mentioned that was one that we wanted to have a utility box on. And so we'd need to increase that value to at least $36,000. I'd missed that in the original discussion, so my apologies.
So do what? I'm sorry.
We need to add,
Instead, it'll be a standard pickup plus a utility box, and the utility box will add
The
$4,000.
water and electric.
it'd be
Water sewer.
the sewer collection,
Collection.
Unit 68. So my apologies there, I'd missed that in the discussion. I knew we needed a 3/4 ton for everything, but I didn't get the utility box in
Yeah,
there.
on the utility box.
Total cost again?
It'd be at least 36,000, so we'll put another 4,000 in there.
Okay.
The total on that line item is 61.
Okay.
Thank you, Jan.
And then Randy is here. I don't have anything on here as a question. I think his budget is pretty much the same as it's been in the past. And that, is there anyone else that has any questions of Randy?
Looks like you're being pretty easy on us this year.
He is easier. Nice to have some of those.
So, no questions? Thank you, Randy, for coming in. Okay.
You can stay, I mean.
Is there anyone that has any other questions of Gary or Jan or Mike? I think at this point in time, we've gotten our questions answered, so unless there's something that you gentlemen have that you'd like to add, and that, we can let you go back on your way.
I want to thank Rocky for coming in this
Yes.
talk today.
You had the day off? That's horrible, I'm sorry.
We need more of that.
No, you're not.
I try not to screw people's days up too bad.
Yeah.
If Gary wants to play, I think Gary's going to play.
I'm thinking she's saying she's not nominating you for an Oscar.
You're more than welcome to stay in that,
love
but,
it.
don't feel obligated, because I think we've answered our questions and that, from your departments and that, so. With that, Jen, did you want to discuss the R&D grant and that Mr. Corman alluded to?
No.
Just
What
basically
do we
the
want to share at this
Well, I don't
point? We've
know.
got a 1 o'clock conference call where we intend to learn a lot about what it is that has been rolled out to us as
Yes.
a potential offer.
I guess, I'd just kind of like to refresh it in that for the citizens in that. And this is basically in that we've applied for a grant to help assist us in completing more renovations in our water system and that than what we've currently been budgeting for. And so there's been a lot of paperwork in that required, a lot of information required. Our staff in that has done that and has applied for this grant and loan, and we're waiting for the answers back from them on how much of it would qualify as a grant, how much we would have to spend in order to go along with the grant, and just see if it's something in that we can feasibly make work for the benefit of the citizens of Madison. Correct me if there was anything I said wrong.
And basically on my
And
end,
Mike,
finance
and if you
end,
wouldn't
on
mind
the-
pulling your microphone down so the people at home can hear you clearer, thank you.
What the terms of the loan could potentially be based on the fact that they are 40-year loans at 3.125% interest.
Mhm.
So figuring out what the dollar amount is, how advantageous a 40-year loan is as compared to even if you would have to bond such a project at a 20-year rate, what is your interest savings between the two? We'll have a lot to learn
Mhm.
today, and we'll have a lot to discuss, and we only have, I believe, 15 days to do so. We can't drag our feet on it. Either you accept what they have offered, or you don't. So, and depending on what happens, that could change a lot of what you have in front of you.
Mhm.
Time will tell.
But at this point in time, we've made the application. Today is when they're going to give us our options, and then we've got 15 days to review those options and make our decision as a city.
Correct.
And you can't piecemeal it, it's an all or nothing,
I do believe so.
take it or leave it?
I do believe so.
Yes, sir.
You spend the loan money first and whatever grant money's at the end, so, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which we know too that places have run into that, you get X amount of loan money, and if your project doesn't meet that for whatever reason, you have to use that loan money first.
Understandable, and I
Before
kinda
you
like
tap
that
into it.
because then otherwise you could extend this out forever. I mean, sitting and negotiate, well, we'll take this little part over here and just, it's better.
It's
all or nothing.
it's something new that we have not done before, but we felt that, it was definitely something worth filling out the paperwork and looking into and seeing what they came back to us with. But at least it's something in that, we don't have answers to right now, but next week we hope to have answers and have the opportunity to sit down and decide whether or not it's something that, as a city, and that we want to do. So,
But, the assets we'll be getting will live far beyond 40 years. I mean,
Yes.
pipe in the ground and a tower.
Right.
And it's definitely addressing some issues for us that would make the system more robust, I think, and operate more efficiently.
Yes.
So I guess I'm eager to move forward on it, so we make sure there's no something there that is unexpected anyway.
So it's a learning process too. Chad, would you like to
Yeah,
add to
just
that?
one quick thing that I think it's important, even at this very preliminary discussion too, is there may likely be some additional financing necessary for the streets portions of that. And so we'll get into more of those details as well after our call today and such, but
Yes.
those will also be things that I anticipate the commission will need to think about, and us as staff will have to talk about, prepare for, and help first understand it and then communicate different options to you on those as well.
But again, it's an opportunity that was out there, and we filled out the paperwork, and we're waiting to hear the answers back. Brad?
In the past, we've talked about the water main replacement, and that we have roughly 40 miles that we need to replace over the next, quite a few years. If we were really aggressive, we'd get about a mile a year, and it'd be a 40-year project. This would take approximately 5 miles and put them all in a 2-year period. And so we would start to compress that time frame a little bit. Again, we'll have to look at the impact, because as we pay more for the note as we go on, it'll reduce what we can do every year. So those things are going to have to be looked at as to how we want to go about that and how much the loan is going to impact our ability to put more water main in every year. But we could, in theory, if everything worked right, we could compress that 40-year time scale down a little bit with this project.
And a potential impact on rates.
Yes.
Yes.
And then we want to look, when we disrupt a neighborhood, I kind of like to address all the issues, the street, stormwater, sewer, if there's an issue, so we don't have to go back. And this project essentially, what does it cover, like a 13-foot wide trench above the pipe is what part of the street this financing would cover. So I prefer to replace the whole street while we're there, just because if you're going to ruin a summer for those neighbors, let's just do it once and every 40 years or whatever.
I
But
assume you're also including telecommunication companies.
Of
and
course, yeah.
Everybody, so, yep. Dig once, bury everything.
So we may be looking for additional financing for the rest of that street, something maybe we'll want to bond or go for an RD. I mean, there's no grant money available for streets, but that's something we'll be talking about going ahead in the future.
It's huge.
So it's a learning process. So,
Good luck at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
any other comments? All right. Is there anything else on here, Jen and Annette, that you
don't
see
think
that
so. I
we
think
haven't
you went through the
haven't addressed?
equipment
Because
review.
a lot of this is our standard budgeting process from annually from year to year. The things that we've talked about at this point in time are just, things that are part of the normal process, but, are the new replacements for this year.
A couple of things that are maybe more finance related I did put back in the budget the ordinance book recodification. That is necessary. That is absolutely necessary, and it's going to be a timing issue too. But our recodification process is about up to that $16,000, and I did put that in the mayor's budget, the mayor's section.
Is that for looking at the whole ordinance book?
That is everything, Roxy, and that is like when you Google somebody's and you bring up Unicode. Right now, that seems to be, do that for me in the short term.
I have done those two that you asked.
American Legal, okay, so we've talked American Legal and Unicode. There's a,
601 happens.
okay, depends on who I ask, so I've got a preference so far. But anyway, we work on it, okay?
Do you know what, just off the top of your head, when the LAIC sales tax rebate sunsets?
Look it up. 2021, maybe? Don't quote me. I think it's 2021. Don't quote me. I can't get to the end drive here the way I'm hooked up. but let me shoot it out to you later for me, okay?
Thank you.
FYI, the depot, Mike McGilvery has been working hard with some depot repair. We need to stick about probably $10,000 into the depot next year. It needs new rain gutters, it needs new, help me out, the wood underneath
Fascia
the rain
and soffit.
gutters. Yeah, just kind of needs a whole TLC, some landscaping, some paint. We've worked with LAIC, they've given us a big long wish list, we've kind of dug through it, budgeted accordingly, but we do need to stick about 10 grand
And
into
still gonna
the
try to
depot.
keep it that historical building looking style instead of changing the new building materials.
Mike, you probably want to talk to SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, on that. I know when we did that upgrade a couple years ago with the ARA funds, that was,
Do they help you?
no pay. They just tell you things you have to do for it. No money. It might raise your budget, actually.
Exactly. They generally add work.
Yeah, I guess I'm sitting here thinking, is 10,000 enough? I mean, it's a nice building, and the mayor's always been quoted as saying, take care of the buildings or the weather will, and so.
We put a new HVAC unit in,
Yes.
what, a year, 2 years ago, about $15,000. We just gave them some new windows. So we're doing a little
Okay.
bit as they're
I
requesting.
just want to make sure it's
This is
enough
just a lump sum.
to cover that, so.
And then FYI too, I am in my capital outlay accumulation request. I am maintaining building reserves for the armory and then also the depot. If I'm granted the request that I am submitting, both of those building reserves will be at $75,000.
Good.
And I plan to just kind of cap it there, because to me that should be.
Yeah, that should be enough, but something major,
Right.
quote unquote, unless it's catastrophic, of
So
course.
this 10,000 is not covered by reserve, we'll spend the 10,000, we'll put a little bit in, I think 17,000 maybe was my request, into the depot reserve, which will then give it $75,000 building reserve.
Okay.
The same is true of the armory. As long as Mike is there, we have talked to, Chad can chime in, we did have the armory tuck pointer come down to take a look to see if there were any necessary tuck pointing issues over at the armory, and he has kind of given us the thumbs up that we're good for a little while.
Yeah, he talked about the tuck point, he said the tuck pointing was fine, and it was the guy that was a bricklayer, so he didn't have a vested interest in trying to sell us tuck pointing, the kind of like tuck pointing company, they wanted to hire.
Of course something's wrong, right?
Yeah, so.
Why are you talking to me?
Yeah.
So, he did suggest that in maybe the west side, the granite on the top, or wherever the surface is, instead of crumble. And he said that that would probably have to be something that's made from Gage Brothers prefabricated to keep it looking the way it used to. So, he said in the next few years, probably replace that top.
That's that limestone that's breaking away.
And there's already been a piece of that has broken off and fallen onto the sidewalk below that I did pick up.
Some yesterday.
Yes,
too.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's.
So that's something that, yeah, we maybe, if not in 2019, 2020, we want to make notes to, start addressing that, because if Mother Nature keeps working on it, and that, it's going to come apart faster and faster each year. So.
And our key fob system is on the up and up. We're finally in. All the bills are finally paid. Our new rec coordinator is all over it as far as the scheduling.
Correct, yes. The fob system, effective Tuesday morning, it switched all to the fob system to tracking. So we'll have to work through that as we go with the change of going from a key that everybody had to a fob system that's going to track everybody that goes in and out of the building. So,
Be some growing pains there, but
there's a note on the door that says that notice you need a key to get in to gain access to contact. Macon at the 401 South Island has his numbers also. Police department, all the city entities have the keys we've had in the demo, so.
and in time it is your, or has that been done? In time it is your intent to completely take the key lock
The
system
key lock
away.
system is gone.
It is gone already. Okay.
Because
Gone already.
scheduling issues on Tuesday night, and so we eliminated it because people saying that there's nobody in there and somebody had already spoken for it, so now they have a key and all that stuff. So that's fob.
And just a reclarification in that, you know, for the news media and the public at home, and that this is something that we've addressed for the last couple of years. There's been keys handed out over the years to the point where nobody knows how many keys, who has keys. There's been people that have been in the building and that were not on the scheduling. There was damage done inside the building and that. So as a method of curbing that and making the facility available to those who are scheduled using it and that, we've gone to electronic fob system. That electronic fob system and that is an electronic record of who has which fob and when they enter and when they leave the building. And so it secures the building now, and we don't have to go through the process of reissuing keys to everybody that takes them down to their neighborhood key maker and makes keys and passes them out to whomever and whatever. So the only way that you can enter the building now is with a fob, and that fob will record who opened the building.
Who do they need to check with in order
To get a key?
yes, the fob?
Lakin is in charge of the keys. The recreation director, Lakin Beckbauer, is the new, and he's in charge of all the keys, and you can get them at 401 South Highland.
And so Roxy, no,
No.
just directly to him?
It's directly to Lakin.
And the information is on the front door, so if someone comes in with their old key and they can't get in, it tells them who to call, and the phone number is there to contact you.
And Lakin is also working on a new facility use agreement. That
Hopefully early
with
next
the
week.
Signature and certificates of liability coverage when necessary.
Does it have a door prop alarm?
Well,
Okay,
Other items?
Okay, I need,
Thanks, Mike.
that's
are
right.
you done?
We'll talk about it later.
Brad asked a
Go ahead.
question, but we can talk about it off camera.
When it comes, gentlemen, and these are little things, but I need your direction because these are not my decisions. So we can talk through them, you can get back to me, you can shoot me what it is that you want me to budget accordingly, I defer to you. But I need direction from you, please, on some of our friends that we support every year. The Interlakes Community Action, for the last umpteen years, we have awarded them $2,000 annual stipend. This year they requested $2,750 that's used for 60s plus dining. I would need your direction on whether to keep it at $2,000, meet in the middle, give them the $2,750, whatever you so choose. And I'll keep going here because there are several.
Questions or comments on this one? Or?
I'd just like to hear all of them first.
Sounds good.
And FYI, for the last several years too, for many, many years, we have contributed to the Senior Companions. That program is no longer upheld here in the city of Madison. I received an email early this spring that says they simply don't have the staff, and if they are able to resurrect that, they would come back to us with a request, but at this time, their $2,500 request that they used to submit is not applicable this year.
How much was it?
25. So you're saving bottom line, you're saving $2,500 there because they did not make that request. Okay, you heard several weeks ago from our friend Chris Francis, the Arts Council. 8,500 is what we, no, excuse me, 7,000 is what we have given them in the past. He requested 10,000 this year.
He requested 10, but you put 85
You put
on this.
8,500.
That was my placeholder.
That was my question.
Contribute to my bottom line.
Yep.
So that's why you saw that 85.
Okay.
Also, the Smith Zimmerman Museum, their annual contribution has been $6,000 for quite some time. She requested $6,500 this year. I am assuming, but I should not assume, that you want to Give the chamber their $85,000. They did not up their request this year, it was the same. That comes out of your lodging and entertainment funds. Also, the same contribution as requested from Mr. Maynard for the LAIC, the Forward Madison, and also the operating contribution that we give to them. Neither of those two requests were increased. Status quo from previous years. Your thoughts and ultimately your direction. Whether you want to give that to me here or you want to follow up with me later is up to you, please.
Forward Madison stayed the same, correct?
Correct. As did their annual operating request contribution.
Those come from the second cent, third cent,
Those come from the general fund. Oh, which one? I'm sorry.
chamber and LAIC.
The chamber comes from the lodging and entertainment. The LAIC annual contribution comes from also your lodging and entertainment, which is your third cent sales tax money.
When's the Best Western anticipated to be done?
I don't know, but I anticipate hearing from Mr. Morris and Mr. Schultz on a bid, setting up a bid improvement district when we get closer to opening that hotel.
The last I heard, the hope was sometime in the fall of 19.
About a year.
Yeah, and
The
third,
Forward Madison comes from general,
Nope, the Forward Madison comes from second cent.
second cent.
Correct. Okay? And those actually, if you look really close, should be on your sheet there, Mike. If you go to second cent,
Oh, here it is up here.
yep.
Well, I'm all right with increasing it for Meals on Wheels.
Okay, hang on.
It'd be
Let me
interesting
get
to see
back
what Mr. Francis will do with his money if we give him his requested amount. He has a lot of good ideas. And then if he doesn't follow through, we can throttle him back the following year.
I think we're gonna see a lot of our friend Mr. Francis, I already have, which is a good thing.
you know, most all of these and that are staying right within the budget where they were before, and so I see no issues, you know. supporting
Especially
them.
with that senior companions going away. I think
Yeah.
we should
Right,
shift
we'll
some
save
of
that
that
for
to
a
Meals.
little bit.
I mean, we have
Yeah.
Meals on Wheels is a great program.
It is,
If you guys have never delivered, I recommend you should.
yeah. I
I've
have.
done it through
Over
Rotary.
the snow drifts.
Right.
I got the
Sooner
bad
than later,
days.
huh, Brad?
In a half hour.
Yep.
Leadership analysis.
Leadership Madison is in there too.
Yeah, I saw it
Yep,
someplace.
and that hasn't changed, so I didn't mention that. It's in your sheet
Are they
there.
gonna go again this year?
Is what?
Are they gonna go again this year?
I have not heard otherwise. Meaning they weren't going to have a fall program
I don't
for
know.
Leadership Madison?
Oh.
I have not heard that.
Or only just wondering, I don't know, maybe then every other year. I leave it then.
Well, it doesn't hurt to budget for it, and then, you know, it doesn't at least. if
I
it
think we
does,
should throw another $500 at the museum too. I'm feeling generous to give me spending
Okay, what am I
general
doing?
fund
Hang on,
money.
I'm talking.
Smith Zimmerman, 65.
Give them what they want.
Smith Zimmerman, give them 65, okay?
Have there been anything
Miss-
that she's run by us that anybody disagrees with?
No.
No.
Okay, so just give everybody their increases, knowing we're saving a little bit in the senior companions.
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
any of the requests are approved, so.
Mhm.
How many storage buildings are we putting out at the airport? Didn't we just do this last year?
We have
No,
not
we budgeted
completed.
for it last year, but nothing happened.
Okay.
Nothing happened, so basically it was just moving that forward into 2019.
And maybe increasing a little bit inflationary, so that's
Yes.
why it's still yellow. I've got the airport coming in at 3 today to finalize a few things with them.
Sure, yep. So
If
that-
you noticed on your listing there, this year's airport project is huge because of the construction, back me up here, jump in, the
The bid.
construction, the bid that we already have. Chad and I talked at length yesterday of exactly how to budget this because it's you budget and these projects draw out several years. You don't always get your reimbursement in the same year. You don't always realize your expense in the year that you budgeted for. It's kind of a crapshoot. We do the best we can. But we did use the bid as already
We received the bid, the grant application.
grant application.
All
Thank you.
those numbers are right in there with a small architectural survey
Yep,
added.
and then I added 300,000 yesterday as per an email from Jake, because there's going to be an additional piece, we can talk later. But anyway, your Your line item in the airport is 3.2 something million. That will be offset by the 95% reimbursement in the revenue side.
And the other thing that kind of skews it is initially in that they were going to do half in one year, half in another year, and then the FAA came along and said, no, we're going to do it all in the same year, which really, and that saves us some money, but in the same process, and that kind of skews your budget in the process.
And related to that, Mayor, last year, actually in 2018, there was put in 1.2 million for phase 1 construction.
Right.
And zero of that's going to be, so that inflated last year's budget by 1.2 million.
Yes.
And that's going to be, at the end on the audit or wherever, that's going to come out at zero, essentially.
Because we budgeted the 2018 expense, even though we estimated the 2018 expense to be under 100,000, even though we budgeted 1.2 million. It's just the timing of the projects and when they happen.
Yes.
Huge. Huge.
If the airport project just goes on.
Yeah.
Seeing the light at the end of the tunnel now.
Yeah.
Okay, let me know.
Yeah.
And you know,
Give me a sign, will you?
and from the city standpoint, it looks huge, but like Jen said, 95% of it does come back to us. If it doesn't come back in 2019, it's going to look like the city is hugely in the red, but if it comes back in 2020, it's going to look like we've got a big windfall and like we won the lottery. So it's all in the accounting, but it's all understood and budgeted for accordingly.
And do note on your cash estimation sheet that you have here, the top yellow line is your general fund. We've definitely got some work to do in our general fund, but for the first time ever that I ever remember, and I've been here a long time already, your estimated expenditures for the general fund alone are over $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the $3.2 million airport project is a huge piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
Are we done with capital outlay? Maybe ask some questions here?
I believe we are, unless someone has any.
No, I just want to know if we're finished.
Any chance core study happens this year, or?
Yes, there is a chance, because we were elected, but that line item's been budgeted for this year, same 50,000. Had some conversations with them recently. We may utilize it this year, in which case that 50,000 will go to zero. If that's,
we should go to East Dakota and ask for some grant money.
we can still do that.
And we talked about a 20% match that I did budget in 2018. Where was that hopefully coming from?
Probably East Dakota.
Okay, so same.
I'm hoping they
same-
fill in the void that the
relevant?
county used to partner with us on.
And we just put in 50 as a placeholder. There'd be a scope of work developed with the Corps, and it's what we're anticipating is a Section 22 Phase 2, which is a 50-50. So obviously this would be 100,000. If it ended up being a little bit more, maybe we spend the 50 plan for 18, and we have to use part of the 50 plan for next year. So we're just spitball estimates at this time, but I think we have enough. They're close enough tolerances that we should be able to make it work.
You were gonna
These
settle for
things,
football estimates? This is incredible.
These timelines are like an airport project, though, aren't they, with the Corps? I mean, if they were to give you a plan, by the time you actually do something, it'd be like 10 years out, wouldn't it?
They take some time. We've had some experience where they've taken some time, and yeah, I would say yes.
So
You
if
need some
the
time.
sooner we can get going,
Correct.
I mean, it's not urgent, but it's a ways out there once you start going, so.
This is a long-term project.
Takes place after the airport stuff.
Yes.
So, give me green light.
Did you not
This
put
way.
anything in for rock wall repair?
Yeah, I have that on my list here too.
We did not.
For the creek
I
wall.
believe our reserve right now is sitting at 50,000. So we did not add any.
That's not gonna do much.
I think that's how we're sitting at that.
If our rock wall goes down in town here, it's gonna be awful expensive.
Right.
Is there a
We've been
risk
bid-
of that happening?
There's a lot of places in that where the material is falling out, and so we haven't.
That
had-
water's got a lot of force.
Yeah.
It does a lot of damage in the spring along with the ice flowing through.
If we ever, sorry, pick a core area of it that we want to keep for historical purposes and give up on other parts that are in lower visibility, is that sacrilegious or?
The problem that you have is in that then it starts eroding the walls away and that goes toward the homes that are along them.
Or Subway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That one's not mine now, though.
I ate there last night, it was delicious.
Good, good. You're supporting the new owners.
Yes.
It only, we
but-
only lost a couple rocks back behind Dr. Brooks' office, and we ended up losing the whole wall here about 8 years ago.
We haven't had a project for a couple of years. We did for
We
several
haven't.
years in a row.
For a few years in a row, we were putting like
25-ish
25 a year toward it.
And we just,
And I think that's something that we need to, put into the 2019 budget again,
And-
to keep moving forward on that, because otherwise it's gonna create some big issues.
I think we try to get an inspection at this time of year when the poles are down, just walk
Sure.
it, get an inventory. Without knowing if we definitively want to proceed with a project, I'm comfortable, if you're comfortable, not budgeting for one, but knowing that upon that inspection, we could utilize some of that 50,000. It would be a subsequent budget action by you to authorize the use of whatever it ends up being, 25,000, if that's acceptable to you all.
I can already tell you in that, that I budget for it and that for 2019 and have it in the budget, because when people were asking me about the cleaning of the creek and that, I drove along the creek for quite a ways, and there's a number of places in that the cement's already fallen out between the rocks.
Yeah, there's some.
So I would suggest putting 25 into 2019 and plan on doing some repairs.
Take it from the reserve.
Either reserves or where we would normally take them from, general, either one.
Either way, I'm comfortable either way.
Yeah.
You think 25 is enough, or do you
Well, I
think
think,
we ought to go 50?
We need to do something because,
Let's go 50.
Look at you spending money, Bob.
Well, I mean, makes more sense to do something like this and keep our town from washing the banks away than it does for some other stuff.
So what's our wishes here?
Our wishes is for somebody to give us a huge grant and just come in and cement and just do a whole alleyway all the way through. Yeah.
We're gonna put another 25 in?
What if we
We're gonna ask for another 25 to put into that, or we're gonna just?
I'd like to see 50.
Okay.
So boost it to 75?
Where's
No,
that coming
boost
from?
it to 100, and then next year,
Well,
Well, where does
we
it
got a lot
normally
of
come
stuff
from?
going on in
General?
2019.
Absolutely, it's general fund.
Yeah. Well, it's maintenance that needs to be done, or else, we'll have bigger expenses in the following years. So if it,
Okay, what's our direction? 50,000 into the reserve or 50,000 into a line item?
into a line item and that, and then, look at what needs to be done, and if we don't spend it all, then that's fine. But if we need to do some repairs, we're able to do it in 2019 because we've already got it there.
50,000 in the line item and leave $50,000 in the reserve, so if we get into some place that's bigger problems, we got extra money to go back on.
Where's this money coming from, Bob?
General fund.
Okay.
Sales tax, Paul. From the online.
Mr. Waldner needs to go at 10:30. Can we
Let's
talk
call it.
cash
Hey,
balances
Mr. Waldner,
quickly?
is there anything on here that you wanted to cover that we haven't touched today?
Nope, just some personnel things that we need to finalize, probably exact, but
So that wouldn't be today.
nope.
Cash balances?
Cash balances, if you would take a look at your cash balances worksheet in front of you, please. Anything in yellow needs tweaking, okay? I've got general fund revenue to manipulate or work on a little bit harder. That's in yellow.
Well,
okay?
and Jen, I'm going to mention, when you say manipulate, these are estimates you're putting together because we're not at the end of the year.
Oh, absolutely.
So from the
Absolutely.
general public standpoint, you're not manipulating
Okay.
it. You've
That
made
is the words.
estimates.
Thank
You've
you.
made
That's
estimates
good.
for us that we can look
Massage
at now
it,
that
how's
will
that?
have to be
Modify the
adjusted
estimate.
later.
Modify this.
Yes, modify is the one I want to hear the word used. Thank
We
you.
will though have to, when I get all the way through our estimated revenue for 2019, we may need to take a close look at your expenses, because please note, like I said, they're 10 million, they're over 10 million for the first time ever, and we're going to need to decide if we're comfortable with the cash balance that we estimate we're gonna have at the end of 2019, or if we need to pull back on it.
Got it.
Okay? Park fund there is in blue. Several of us have talked. We do need, when we will sit down next week, myself, Kelly, and Gary and Mike, and talk about some park issues. And I am comfortable personally with a park fund balance at the end of 2019 at $589,000. I think that's good for your parks fund. However, that doesn't cover what we have right now in our capital outlay accumulation requests. So we're going to have to back off somewhat, and the four of us will work that out next week. Okay? In the middle here, you've got lots of green things that aren't filled in. Those are just easy things that I can catch up on this weekend. Your lodging and entertainment tax stuff, there's very little dollars that come out of there. Community development. Do you want me, gentlemen, to fund the community center $106,500, which is their initial request, from this community development fund fully?
I guess I would say yes in that, for this year, and that in view of, the statement you made just before that with the $10 million that we've got in there.
Thank you, I agree.
The community development monies was for that, so I'd say let's take it from that and then work with figuring out the rest of it later on.
And we can talk balance, when you mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier the community development cash fund balance. The $176,000 there was at the end of 2017. We have accepted payments during 2018 of both of our loans. The LAIC paid theirs off just a few weeks ago when they sold that building to DSU, I believe. And then Rosebud had to make their balloon payment due July 1st. So at this current time, we don't have a community development loan out there, and it may be a good conversation between now and the end of the year to decide if we even want to offer such a thing anymore, or if we simply want to use this fund, continue to use this fund to put towards our CC contribution, or what exactly we want to do with these monies.
So we have much more than 177 now?
I don't have the investment report
Yes, we
in
do.
front of me, but yes, we do, because
But-
both payments were over $100,000.
And just to give you a little bit of
Almost
history
a
of,
few more years.
just to give you a little history of where this,
Is going to be questionable.
just to give you a little history of where this fund came from, it was established during a time period of difficult times, and it was used as an incentive to help our local businesses and that add employees and bring employees to Madison. So it had a purpose and a time, and we've been discussing in that whether or not that time has finally come to a conclusion.
Right. And
Yeah,
the
I
changes
don't-
that we now,
I was just gonna say, I don't, I don't think the city needs to be in the lending business.
I
We got
agree.
enough lending companies, and let them do what they do. But, so, I'd be for getting rid of it, but then let's take the 200,000-300,000, almost 400,000 that's in there now, and do we just roll that into general?
that would be my suggestion. It would also, though, come with ordinance changes, because this community
Yep.
development fund
Yes.
is
And
based
that's,
on
and that's fine.
ordinance.
That's,
So it would be a procedure, it would be a process.
do
Yep.
whatever's legal to make it happen, but I
Okay.
think that's,
I totally agree with
if we
that.
just,
Yep.
either that, or we roll it into, if we have a big project in economic development or something, the parks, if we got something going on in that, because it's for community development, if we got something going on downtown. We gotta change out the light poles or something downtown.
Again?
Or we
Yeah.
could, or
No,
we
I'm
could
just
roll
saying
it,
if we
or we could roll it
had-
into paying off our CC debt, that we've got budgeted too. So we have options.
You have
Yeah.
options.
But
Think
it,
about
but
that
it's,
between
but it's
now and
things
the
in
end
that,
of the year,
that
what
we'll
you wanna
discuss
do
at
with those
a later
funds.
time. But for now, let's budget the 106.5 from that, and then concentrate on, the airport and everything we've already
And
got
that
in
will
the
help
general
our
fund.
general fund to the tune of $125,000.
Yes,
So-
yes.
Okay. All right, second sentence, sales tax, we'll roll that one out. Take a look at water, please. Your water is in blue. I'm done with water. If you all gentlemen down there are done with water, Our water rate, can we talk about that quickly? What we have budgeted or what we're budgeting, what we will plan to roll out later on in ordinance, unless this RD business changes anything, would be no base increases for 2019 in your water fund. Extra meter charge increased by 50 cents, but then increase your unit charge to $2.559. Now that does not, because of some change in meters, some changes that we just have in our water department, that actually doesn't generate a whole lot of revenue, if any at all. But I anticipate, again, maybe changes with RD loan if we agree to accept that. Also, gentlemen, help me out here. As we move into Tyler Tech and we take a very good look at our day-to-day billing practices, we may see some big changes. Just the way that we have billed things forever and ever. So bottom line, what I need.
Corbin, comments?
I'm good with the water budget.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it.
Electric budget is in yellow. I will work on that this weekend. I've got revenue to do. You need to look, please, very closely at the expenditure stuff that was just rolled out and verify that I've gotten everything for that you need. Sewer fund, any comment on that? You'll see that fund balance, and then also the column, gentlemen, way to the right, that stands off a little bit, that's also in blue. That is your difference for 2019, your revenue over expense or expense over revenue. So as long as you're comfortable, we don't have to talk about them individually, as long as you're comfortable with your expense over revenue and or your cash balances at the end of the year, for water, sewer, community center, solid waste, and recycling, we're going to call those funds pretty much done. All of the transfers have been accounted for in and out. I'm comfortable if the department heads too are comfortable.
I'm comfortable, except I would like to ask the public, please do more recycling, because we can reduce our costs in that of the garbage that we haul, and we can increase what we have in the recycling center to pay to help offset the negative that we normally operate under. So from a recycling standpoint and that, we really ask the citizens to please recycle more. Please recycle more. There's too much of it showing up in the garbage truck at the end of the day. So.
And you will note, which is unusual, your solid waste fund is upside down by about $100,000 this year, simply due to the purchase of the garbage truck. That's a big purchase. We'll get that done. We're not going to have to buy another one for several years, and we'll continue then to replenish that reserve. And
thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Brad, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Nope, sounds good.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Is everybody comfortable with any questions, comments?
Okay. Might I suggest that Monday's agenda, right now Monday's agenda is short. I haven't gotten any new emails. We should have a very short agenda on Monday. Do we want to continue budget discussion? And
What do you want to
get
talk
through
about if we do?
General fund, park fund.
Okay. Put it on there. We can always pull it off.
Okay?
But at least that way the public would know.
But again, also knowing and expecting that Monday evening's first reading will be a first reading, but we'll likely have another first reading unless we can bang all of this stuff out between now and then. We'll likely have another first reading a week or so down the road.
Sounds great.
I'll be out of town the following week.
Okay.
What day? Can you tell me that, please? Can I ask?
About the 17th probably.
Okay.
Available by phone?
Yeah, I'll be in
That's
Fort
sidewalk
Worth,
night, if
but-
that matters. That's our hearing on sidewalks.
Perfect.
Perfect night to be drawn.
All right, if we have
I can call in though, I'll be available.
Okay.
If we have no other questions, comments, or things to cover, do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all the department heads. We got a great group here.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate all of them very much.